Hey everyone, so today I'll be talking about a game I played on lichess against GM Vasif Durarbayli. It's an Azerbaijani grandmaster. Um, Currently having a FIDE rating of 2606. So we played this game on lichess. It was a rapid time control game. Um, on lichess it's about 2800 and I'm about 23 to 2400. So as you can see my rating on the left. So this game was quite interesting. A lot of different ideas, a lot of opening ideas and positional game, positional ideas, uh, which are which I found to be quite interesting to study. So essentially, what my opening repertoire as white, I begin with the white pieces is d4. I usually play d4 or knight f3, the queen's pawn or the red t opening. So essentially, d4 invites d5, the queen's pawn symmetrical variation. Uh, so it's actually d4, d5. Well, initially being symmetrical, you have the c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, bishop d2 ideas. Then you have the Tartokawa variation and many other variations here in the Queen's Gambit decline. So essentially d4, and I usually also play the Catalan. So let's say d4, d5, knight f3, the Zucatot. And for example, knight f6, you have g3, and then bishop g2. Castling playing c4. You have knight d2, sometimes bishop d2, try to capture the c4 pawn after um, in return, and you actually have a very strong light square bishop eyeing on the diagonal. Anyway, this in this game I play d4. You play knight f6, essentially inviting um, playing a hyper modern setup. So, well, some call it the hyper modern setup, but it's kind of a modern style of defense. Like there is the Grunfeld. So after let's say the c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g bishop g7, knight f3. There's this d5, the Grunfeld defense, three knight variation. Anyway, these are were non-standard back in the 20th century. And it was Grunfeld and the others who pioneered these defense systems. But anyway, back to this game. This is known as the Indian game. Usually, my main move is knight f3. I play the fianchetto variation of the King's Indian. So something like g6, c4, bishop g7, knight c3, d6, g3, uh, castles, bishop g2 kind of setup. So this game is very well known. Continue with knight c6, c6. You have a6, knight bd7. There's also bishop g4, h3, many lines in the fianchetto variation of the King's Indian. But anyway, d4, knight f6. I also have a different repertoire in this position, and that is the move bishop g5, the Trompowsky attack. So essentially, this is non-conventional in the sense that there is not much opening theory in this position. It is studied, yes, but not the same way in the sense of Ruy Lopez, the London system, uh, Italian system, like the Gioco Piano, Gioco Pianissimo, or the Catalan even, the London system, Queen's Gambit, etc. It's not well studied in that sense because this position is known to be, if played accurately, does not give additional advantage to white, even though uh, you open the setup. So anyway, here black actually can be punished if played the wrong move. For example, I'll illustrate one. h6 is a bad move because after bishop takes f6, e takes f6, e3, e3 c4. So d5, c4, uh, knight, let's say knight f6, c takes f6, queen takes f6, knight f3, something of that sort. And then of course the queen has to go back. But anyway, that's just demonstrating one of the moves. Here, white has a huge center, and black has double pawns and not great development. So it's much easier to play for white actually. h6 is one of the common mistakes in this position. But anyway, here there's also knight e4, essentially asking why what white's bishop is doing on g5. So here the main moves are bishop f4 and also h4, defending the bishop. So here bishop e4, essentially most common move is c5. c5 here you should play either e3 or f3. E3 or f3, kicking the bishop away, or there is also in positions d5, or just simply taking the pawn. Anyway, f3 is the main move, kicking the knight away. C3 is played as well, yeah, as I mentioned, as I just shown. E3 is just being solid, and you can go for kind of a Jobava London setup, playing knight c3, e3, f3, and then expanding like that. There is also the move h5. So if knight takes g5, h takes g5, you open the line of sight for your rook. So kind of similar in the London in the sense that suppose if the bishop on the dark square does trade on the bishop on g3, opening up the rook. Here actually, even though that the g pawn is double, white here actually has stifled black's development. Usually players play g3 and g6 and play bishop g7. And if, for example, d5 trying to protect the pawn, here you have knight f3 protecting the pawn again. So the queen cannot re-attack it. And actually, it's very difficult to attack this g5 pawn, and it does hinder black's development. So it's actually a very favorable option for someone who learns the theory and the lines of the raptor variation, which this is called h4. So instead of knight e4 here, this move e6 was played, known as the classical defense of the Trompowsky. Essentially, e4 is the main move response, also the best one given by the engines. So you have h6, that's the main move as well. Bishop takes, and then queen takes, obviously, because you don't want to ruin the structure of your pawns. Here e4 was played before. For example, e4, queen e7, and then here knight, for example, knight d2. Then you have queen a4 actually, queen b4. Queen b4 here. This position was reached by Sokolov and Baker in 1995. So this position actually, there is a in one of my games I've played this position as well. And here I instead of Andrei Sokolov and Guenter Baker, notice that you can't defend either of these one of these pawns, so they opt to protect the d4 pawn. So they played knight f3 in this position. Guenter played anyway to protect this pawn. In this position, I played c3, giving up this pawn here because I saw one trick in this position. The other is that if you play queen b2, you have rook c1, and if he plays something like d5, you have en passant. And there is this move after retakes. There is knight c4. The idea of knight c4 is that the queen is trapped, completely trapped. So the idea is that obviously, if you played here, the only move here actually is queen takes a2. And you have this move rook a1, and the queen is completely trapped. This is a very nice move. And actually, if d5 doesn't happen, queen takes b2, you have rook c1, and then let's say I play a normal developing move, queen takes a2, just taking the pawn. You have knight c4 again, and then if the queen tries to escape from rook a1, playing something like this, then you have just check, and we win the queen again. It's a very interesting position. So anyway, just went on a tangent there. Played queen takes f6 instead of e5. I played knight f3, more common move. This is actually known as the big center variation of the Trompowsky attack. So after knight f3, d6, knight bd2, a6. Interestingly, an inaccuracy, but actually it is a move played by many people in this position. So bishop d3 is developing, knight c6, c3, Just adding defense to this pawn here. Now e5 played here, trying to pawn break. Obviously, I won't accept this pawn break. I play d5, asking what the knight should do. So the knight went back e7. I suspect knight e7 to be the most natural move here. Obviously, because you don't want to just return to your squares where the knight is not doing it that much. So knight e7, castles. Here g5 was played, trying to expand on the king. Obviously, because black king is still in the center, it's not committed to one side here. Yeah. Here I played knight f e1, essentially trying to evade the attacks here, because if, for example, if I didn't play this, there would come pawn storm here, g4. It would be difficult to defend. So I played knight f e1, trying to rotate the knight over. Was one of my plans. Here bishop g7 was played. I played queen a4 here. It's a nice idea. So queen a4 here, it's a very nice idea because obviously you don't want to move your king. So bishop d7 was played. Here I missed an idea actually. I saw queen b3. I played queen b3 in this position, trying to threaten this pawn. But the problem here is that white can simply go b6 and white is completely fine. There is a even better move here, queen c4. And the idea of queen c4 is that it's not easy to defend this pawn, because after rook c8, then I can play rook b3, queen b3, and for example, if I play rook b8, which is the recommended move, there is this move, queen takes a6, and essentially, if you take back, then you lose your rook. So I would win a pawn here, and white is actually winning a given slight advantage. So then again, slight advantages do matter. So here, if for example queen b3, you play b6. Here white is just completely winning bishop a6, obviously. If you play b5, then you have a4, and it's not easy to defend these pawns. There's a backwards pawns here, and the open rook a file soon to be open if black takes. So here actually white is winning as well. So I should have played queen c4, but I did not see that in my game. Instead I played queen b3 and rook just b6, and obviously you can't take here anymore because the rook covers. I play rook c1, it castles. I play queen back to d1 because I noticed there was nothing much to do here anymore. So I played queen c4 just now. Then finally queen g6, a4, trying to expand on the queen side. Here g4 was played as I expected, moving the knight back. a5 here, I sacked the pawn in this position because after b takes a5, I had an idea of playing knight c4, essentially taking this pawn and trying to enter into the outpost here, but obviously it doesn't quite work at this position. So a4 was played, not allowing me to take the pawn. I play rook a1, trying to grab the pawn again. h5 was played, trying to expand on the king side. Here g3, kind of the only move here, prophylactic move to stop black from pawn storming me. Here h4 was played, and actually I chose knight e3, trying to come back to defend this pawn. So essentially my pawn sacrifice was to some extent ill-advised because I couldn't reclaim the pawn and gain a positional advantage after that. But after not missing queen c4 in the beginning, my position was quite poor already. In this position, about 3 moves ago, it was completely equal, and in this position, black is given actually slight advantage. So bishop h6 was played. After knight g2, defending, trying to grab this pawn here. h3, knight h4, attacking the queen. Queen h5, and here I have a nice outpost on this position. And that's playing knight f5, which I didn't play first. I played queen e2, rook b8. So in this position, actually, both sides are completely equal. Rook b1 defending the pawn. Rook b6 developing. Knight here. Knight e f5, nice outpost. Knight takes. And here you don't actually want to take with the bishop. Because actually it's white here that has a massive attack. Because after e takes f5, for example, a5, rook takes a4, and actually you're winning back your material and threatening to take back this g4 pawn. So white here actually starts to have a massive attack if you play this move, even though it seems like it damages white's pawn structure on a superficial level. It actually hinders the safety of your own king. Remember, your king castle on the king side with wide open pawns. Anyway, so he did not take because he's a very strong grandmaster. Rook b8. Here I defended my pawn with rook e2. A better idea was actually playing knight e7 check. I didn't like this. I didn't like this one because I saw knight e7, I saw king f8, I saw knight c6, and then I saw after bishop takes c6, rook takes rook takes c6, rook takes c6. Sorry, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, and rook takes c6. I didn't like this position because the rook could return and place more pressure on my pawn. Here actually I missed the move of the bishop a6 is perfectly fine. And the idea is that you open up also the idea of playing rook a4. So here white is fine. Instead of playing knight c7 check, I made an inaccuracy. I played rook a2. So black here is winning again by a little bit. A5 was played. Bishop c2, attacking this pawn. King f8. Bishop takes a4. Here, this move was completely. I did not need to take this pawn. Actually, the right idea here. Remember that moving to safety. The idea of keeping the bishop here was actually to put more pressure on the enemy king. So I could had to leave this bishop here, so that when the bishop does take on f5, I have an attack here, a possibility, a looming attack of rook a4, and then attacking on the enemy king. So the bishop had to stay on c5, but I missed the idea of the bishop taking here. So I played bishop a4. This is a mistake because after e takes f4, everything starts to drop. Queen takes f5. Here rook e1 was played. Remember, this is a rapid game, so here there is not much I can do except giving a queen trade here, because queen g2 is made. So I had to give the queen trade here, especially it's a bit difficult in the rapid time format. But anyway, after that, I play b3, protecting the pawn. King e7, c4, f5, rook b2, e4, b1, bishop here. And this was when I had too little time, and I was already lost. So I played just king f1, bishop takes, rook b2 here, and then I had 10 seconds on my clock. Just blundered this idea of rook a4, because after rook a4, if I take back, then there's just this. So my pawn was pinned. So essentially, what went wrong was the possibility of gaining an advantage initially with a queen c4 idea, but afterwards I was winning and it was equal, but it was a good game nonetheless. I think I fought back quite well given that he was a grandmaster. So this was one of my favorite games. Not favorite games. Well, favorite games of my um recent ones. Yeah, quite an interesting game, born out of Trompowsky, which is not too common, I think, because people view Trompowsky as a slightly dubious opening, but it does give way, yeah, at least different ideas, novel opening ideas, and different positional games. But anyway, just wanted to share a game I played against Vasif Durarbayli, Azerbaijani grandmaster. So hope you guys enjoyed this game, and please like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below for any video suggestions and advice and things like that. I hope you guys enjoy the game. Thank you for watching. See you.